Hi, my name is Steve Ela, and I'm with Ela Family Farms here in Hotchkiss, Colorado. And
I'm Regan Choi, and we're partners.
uh, so, my family moved to western Colorado in 1907 on my mother's side. They're the farm side. They started growing peaches and various other fruits down in the Grand Junction area, Palisade area. They moved around from farm to farm, and eventually my granddad bought a place in 1920, and that is the place that I grew up next to and on, and that my mom bounced around for a while but came back to, along with my dad. My mom was the farmer. My dad was a district court judge, so he got roped into farming but was willing to use a shovel. And we grew fruit down in the Grand Junction area until the city started to expand, and it kind of rolled out over the rural landscape and eventually over our farm. That farm is now houses. My brother still lives in my grandmother's house, but it's in the midst of sea of houses. And as that was happening, we knew we weren't probably going to be able to continue to farm down there, so we knew the growers up here on Rogers Mesa. And in 1981, my uncle bought a piece of property up here that I helped work on, and then in 1987, we bought this farm that we're on currently. This was a historical fruit farm. It only had 4 or 5 owners over the years, so it had a lot of good bones, I guess, as they would say, and we've had this place for now, what is it, 2023 plus 13, so 35 years. I grew up on the farm. I left for a while to go to school and do some other work, and eventually made the choice to come back, and that partly was when my parents were trying to decide whether to buy this place or not. If I wasn't going to come back, they weren't going to buy it, and if I did, we did. So here we are. Interestingly, on my dad's side, my great-granddad came to Grand Junction, the Glade Park area in 1890, and took over a cattle operation up there. But that side of my family eventually moved down into town and were bankers, and were less involved in the agricultural side, except from the monetary standpoint. So we've always been fruit growers. Obviously, in that 100 plus years, we've grown fruit every different which way, and we've marketed every different which way. My granddad in the 20s used to drive to Denver a couple times a week to market fruit over there. Drive on with an old truck. Vail Pass didn't exist. Obviously, the tunnels, Eisenhower Tunnel, didn't exist. So you would either have to go up through Kremlin and over Berthoud Pass, or down over Monarch Pass and up through Fairplay. In fact, my mom remembers a number of times waking up, going with him, but waking up to have breakfast in Fairplay, because he and my granddad's cousin would drive all night and go over and then come back and pick fruit and drive back over, back and forth. And so
The roads wouldn't have even been paved.
the roads weren't paved. Every time I get grumpy about driving to Denver, I think that was a much different process at that point. So, just as a little background, we've also sold fruit in Denver in the 20s. We had our own packing shed when I grew up, packed and then sold through a distributor that marketed for a number of growers. When we moved up here, we've marketed through High Quality Packing in Delta, which is now gone. Also through Rogers Mesa Fruit here, but since about 2000, before that, we were basically picking everything in the bins, taking it to the packing shed, letting them do the packing and marketing. But economics changed somewhat, especially in the apple industry. In 1998 and 1999, there were some both frost years and very low price years for various reasons. And we had to kind of look at ourselves and say, if we're going to keep doing this, we can't survive in that venue. For example, 1998, for every 800 pound bin of apples that we had, I think it was returned to the farm about $25. Not very economic. It didn't actually pay for the picking that year. So we looked at ourselves and said, well, we've always done farmers markets in the Grand Junction area. We always had a retail fruit stand at the farm there. So let's kind of go back to some of those roots. We started going to farmers markets over in the Denver area. We did 2 markets in 2000, and then we have winnowed through various markets, and at this point we're doing 7 markets on the Front Range on the weekends. And that, in a normal crop year, we'll sell about 40 to 60% of our fruit through the farmers markets. The last few years where we've had very light crops, we've sold almost 100% of it through the markets. We work also directly to consumer with CSA shares, community supported agriculture, and we vary on how many of those shares we sell a year, but somewhere between 400 to 1,000 during the pandemic. We sell directly to small specialty food stores on the Front Range, where they can put our name on fruit and differentiate themselves from the big box stores. And that's maybe 20% of our sales. And then we also work with one big box store, Whole Foods, and they buy, depending on the year, processed products from us as well as fresh fruit. So that's very different from what we were doing in the 90s, where we let somebody else do all the packing and marketing, to where we do all our own packing, all our own marketing for everything we grow. We also have a commercial kitchen on the farm where we make artisanal apple sauces and jams, fruit butters, dried fruits, whatever we can to make money.
All I want to say is as you're talking about the changes in how the fruit gets to market, I really think you ought to throw in a little comment about the railroads.
Yeah, so, changes in the area. I mean, obviously in 100 years, technology has changed a ton. But back in the 20s, 30s, even 40s, before refrigeration was really well developed, the whole Colorado peach crop was moved out by rail often, back east, Midwest, out to California. But those cars were iced down. They would cut ice up in Leadville all winter, store it in packing houses or in ice houses in Grand Junction near the railroads, and then they'd pick the peaches, load them onto the rail cars, and then chip the ice into the cars to cool them. And they'd stop in Denver and re-ice them again before they went out to how they were marketed. So,
and that all happened like in a 2-week period. It wasn't the extended season we see today. The railroads would actually agglomerate all the cars here over the preceding month or two, so they'd have enough railroad cars ready for the inundation of peaches that people would bring down to the rail yard.
And then they just it was a big push, and that's how Palisade peaches and Delta County, Hotchkiss, Paonia, Cedar Ridge peaches became famous around the country, where those big just pushes of these awesome tree-ripe peaches out into the country. The fruit it's interesting. Fruit is, in Colorado, we're not supposed to be able to grow fruit here. It's not a climate for fruit trees. And so what you see is fruit being grown in these little microclimates. And Palisade is one of them. Rogers Mesa, where we are, is one of them. Paonia, Cedar Edge, Olathe, even down by Cortez. There are these little spots where we kind of cheat Mother Nature, where the microclimate is just altered enough to be mild enough for trees to grow and be a commercial production. But over the years, and in the 20s and 30s, there was a tremendous fruit industry in Colorado, the likes of we'll never see again. And that disappeared largely, somewhat because of, there was a lot of hope you plant everywhere, but also codling moth, the worm in the apple. We didn't have that, and when that was introduced to the area, accidentally, it destroyed a lot of the fruit industry because people couldn't control it.
That's another big change there's been is in consumer standards. The coddling moth, his mom would talk about how she, in the packing shed when she ran it, they would have the 1-worm apple, the 2-worm apple, and then the family grade apple. but like those were completely marketable.
Those were actual grade standards. And, the joke with my granddad was that he always guaranteed the fruit he sold, and he said, well, if I sell you a 2-worm apple and it's only got 1, bring it back and I'll give you one with 2. But that has been one of the things our family's always done, is we've always stood behind the fruit we grow, and we'll make it right if we mess up. But and we've seen, those days when codling moth was introduced and it destroyed the industry, they were using lead arsenate to spray. Nice, benign substance there, and they had to use hydrochloric acid bath to run the apples through to get the lead arsenate off. So DDT came in. Obviously, that was quote unquote, a huge godsend for the fruit growers because now they could control worms. We obviously know there were downstream effects of that, and that was not the godsend they hoped for. But it did change the industry. And then after that, the fruit industry went through the chemical treadmill of all the various other organophosphates and really very poisonous compounds that were sprayed to control insects. And now we're certified organic. We've been certified, 100% certified since 2004, I think, and started organic methods in 1994, following in the footsteps of some other growers around. We certainly weren't the first. But so now we've moved away from those toxic chemistries to, pretty much a biologically mediated system. And we still spray some because we have to, but we're going to choose materials that help keep the ecosystem alive and active and use that ecosystem as much as we can to grow fruit. So that's a very radically different concept from lead arsenate or DDT to organic production and how we think of ecosystem management. We're not looking at just the apple tree, we're looking at the whole farm. So at this point, we again have had more problems with codling moth, even with our best organic methods, and so now we're netting some trees to try and exclude the moths.
Which really is as big as it sounds, like long rows of trees completely covered in continuous sheets of netting.
So the worms can't get to the apples. So it's a continuous adaptation. Mother Nature is dynamic. Organic farm is dynamic. How we respond to insects and do it in the best way we know how. We have cover crops under everything because we want to build our soils. We also want to work to sequester carbon for as part of the climate change idea. And all those things, originally the fruit crops were clean cultivated. It was trees and everything was disked. My granddad was one of the first ones to actually plant cover crops and have a mower. And that was radical at that time. But he figured out how to do it. And now we wouldn't grow trees without a cover crop. And we're trying to grow our own fertility with the use of legumes and nitrogen fixing plants. And we're trying to build organic matter in soils that aren't always the best soils here.
And it helps protect the moisture.
Protect the moisture, yeah. We've gone from furrow irrigation to drip and micro sprinklers to help save water and use it efficiently. We've changed different varieties that we grow, especially in apples, because consumers want different things. It's no longer Red Delicious and Gold Delicious and Rome Beauty apples. It's, Honeycrisp and Fuji and heirloom varieties like Essepa Spitzenberg and Swiss Gourmet. So we respond to what consumers want. It's a slow process because to plant a tree, it takes 3 years to get it from the nursery. It takes 6 years to get it into production. So you're looking at 9 or 10 years of our crystal ball trying to guess what people are going to like. But that's what we do.
Yeah, it takes 6 to 8 years for a newly planted block of trees to come into production enough to be able to bring it to market, which is a little bit of a longer range vision than for a lot of other crops.
Yeah. So we're very committed to long-term thinking, both in soil building and organic methods and ecosystem management and fruit production.
That goes to the research collaborations and all the carbon neutral stuff, and how working as an organic farm and thinking about systems, we actually have really been right in the groove for really thinking about sustainability on a larger scale and being a carbon neutral farm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so doing our best to help reduce climate change, I guess. And I think that's, I said 2000 was a kind of a turning point for how we were marketing, but Delta County was the primary apple production area of Colorado. It still is, but we've lost over 80% of our apple production in Delta County. And you can look on Rogers Mesa and driving around where I remember orchards, and now it's all open ground or hay ground or grazed. And so Delta County has changed. The fruit production has decreased significantly, and the markets have changed with consolidation of buyers. And City Market isn't just City Market; it's Kroger, and so that's very different. And we'll see. I don't know where, with climate change, where things will go. The microclimates, as I said before, we cheat Mother Nature a little bit, but I see those microclimates getting smaller. There's still some beautiful sweet spots. I mean, the east end of the Grand Junction area, Palisade area, is a wonderful sweet spot. We're still up here on the top of this mesa, even though it's moved upwards. Paonia still got their sweet spots, but we're vulnerable, and we've had more radical weather, both with snowpack and freezes. And 2 years ago, we had a unknown October freeze that took out, that literally killed half our peach trees. So those are the things we worry about now, along with the labor to pick and pack the fruit. And that, I guess that's where our uncertainty is at this point, is, will we be able to continue if climate changes too much? We rely on a stable climate. If it changes, it's not economic. You could still grow fruit, but you may not be able to grow it commercially.
One of the things that's let us stay here has been collaboration, for sure, with government programs and research programs, and being able to work with other people for possible solutions to pest disease management, being able to change from open furrow irrigation to micro sprinkler, being able to put solar panels up. So we're providing like 80% of our own electricity at this point. But I think one big point about being able to adapt to the changes and being able to stay is that any small family farm, nobody can actually do it by themselves. You can't survive without working with a broader community.
Yeah, we also try and be involved in the broader community, whether it's local groups or I served on the National Organic Standards Board. Regan served on state health boards. We all think that's part of the ecosystem of the farm. That's to be. It's not just the trees and the plants. It's the people on it. And we often tell our customers in the Front Range that they are part of the ecosystem, because what they buy changes how the farm looks. That's a huge, when you talk about voting with your dollars, it's actually true.
It really is.
If you like this variety of peach and not that, guess what we're going to grow, or apple or whatever. And so, it is a much broader ecosystem than a lot of people think about it, I believe. And I think, as we're getting older and tireder and, probably want to slow down a little bit more. We're not totally sure what's next. I mean, this farm is in a conservation easement. My parents, especially my mom, being the farmer, was so distressed at losing the land in Grand Junction and having that be overrun, that when we moved up here, we were very committed to making sure this farm, and fortunately a number of other farms in Rogers Mesa have also done it, to stay in agriculture forever. And we were willing to, tie our hands on that because we believe in that. So whether we're here or somebody else, we hope it's a vibrant agricultural spot. So that was one of the things that brought me back, and also to grow our own food. I like growing things, and I like having things in the pantry that we've grown and not just having to go to the store. And so,
being able to be part of a barter system. We like everything that we would not be able to sell. First, we take it to our commercial kitchen, but anything that's too ugly for that, or the rinds and the pits, those go to the pig farmer up the road, and we end up with a trade. We get a pig. The pigs get fed. I love that about being around here.
Yeah, and so I think that's, as we think about what we're going to do next, it's that just, it's not, I'm not worried about the world coming to end per se, but I'd like to be able to grow my own food. That will be a struggle if we leave the farm.
Is that what you would miss the most?
it's one thing I would miss, and just being able to walk out and look at the mountains, uh, getting your hands dirty and feeling things, even though I don't do that as much as I used to anymore because I'm in the office a lot. But there is satisfaction of taking sunlight and water and turning it into really good fruit.
I'd miss the cascade of growth, like the just profusion of blooms in the spring, and watching them burst and then get tiny into little tiny fruits that start to grow, and then those get picked and the leaves change and they fall and the trees are bare. I love that.
Yeah. And, one of my favorite things is plant trees.